Yandri, it's great to have you here today. The South African tax scene, quite a beast to uncover. Not many people I know that would be better to do so than yourself. Me, myself, individual taxpayer, and I have a bunch of things I'm not sure about, a bunch of misconceptions. You know, what would you say is some of the most common misconceptions when it comes to the individual taxpayer in South Africa?
Yeah, Andre, first, thank you very much for having me. I do think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and I think we see it in practice every day.
Yeah.
It's important, firstly, to understand that some taxpayers' tax affairs are a bit more complex than others. But to give you an idea, firstly, is we've seen a lot of cases where clients perhaps have a side hustle, as they call it, in their personal capacity, where they do sell products, for instance, as well as deliver services, perhaps. In that sense, what they basically do is they have a business in their personal capacity. And of course, that is seen as a taxable event.
Yeah.
And being such, it's of course needed to declare in your taxable income. So that will be, for me, the first misconception in there. Of course, we have a look at clients that are married in commutative property as well. What we've seen with them is they think that is basically filing an individual income tax return as per a normal taxpayer. That, however, is not the case, as there are certain areas where it needs to be 50% of your partner's income as well as 50% of your income, such as cases where you receive investment income, for instance, rental income, as well as capital gains if there's perhaps something that was sold. What we've also seen is SARS perhaps providing you with a notice saying that you are non-compliant, with a few years returns outstanding, and then the taxpayer mentions to us, but look, the employer filed their RP5. How can it be that I'm compliant? And where does SARS get this from? So of course, that is definitely a misconception in the sense of it's only half of the job done.
Yeah, exactly.
When your employer files, right? So the other half would be basically you still needing to file your yearly income tax returns, because of course there can be cases where you have additional income, such as rental or the examples I mentioned earlier, where you still need to file your income tax return on a yearly basis. We have clients that immigrate or leave the country and then they think that they do not need to file their income tax returns anymore. But SARS has structures in place to cease your residency and so forth, so that if you decide not to file taxes, you firstly need to go through that process. So just in general as well, you perhaps do not hear from SARS and you think you're compliant. That is perhaps also a misconception in the sense of you still need to update your details. If you perhaps moved, if you have a different email address, different contact number, still need to update that with SARS as well in general, so that you make sure that you do receive the necessary correspondence from SARS.
2 points. One point I sort of actually wanted to ask you a bit more about. So I think a lot of it's also gets down to the thing of certain activities actually constitute taxable events, but because people might think they might choose either willingly or unwillingly to not declare it. And then later down the line, they realize, oh, shucks, I'm in trouble. I'm incurring admin penalties and so, etc. The first thing that pops to mind is the thing of, rental income. When do I declare it? When do I not declare it? Is there anything you can sort of add to that and sort of an idea that someone might have about those things that is not true?
So a lot of times you have a small space perhaps in your house. You rent it out for a very low amount per month. That still constitutes a rental income in general. Of course, you need to declare that rental income, but of course there's expenses as well that can be taken in consideration.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of tax optimization in that sense as well, with regards to rental income. So that still needs to be declared in that sense. The same with being a sole proprietor, perhaps selling goods in your personal capacity.
Yeah.
It may be for you to have a bit of spare change in your pocket, but in the end of the day, it's still a taxable event. Also there, depending on the trade, if you either provide consulting in your personal capacity or selling shoes in your personal capacity, there's still expenses there as well.
Yeah.
That can be deducted. So it's not just doom and gloom in the sense of I need to declare income. There's also some tax optimization with deductible expenses.
Okay. Let's say I am an individual taxpayer. I think to myself, I'm going to absolutely nail my e-filing and I'm going to completely avoid the cost of going to a tax professional, getting some tax optimization done or whatever, because I'm going to do it myself. What am I potentially not only missing out on, but what might I misconstrue in my head as to what information I provide, what I don't provide, what is technically correct, incorrect, what am I leaving on the table for myself, but also what am I potentially, incurring for myself along the way, what kind of, potentially penalties and etc.
Exactly. So a lot of clients think that it's when you file your income tax return, there's always options to rectify it and so forth.
Yeah.
In that sense, SARS has strict deadlines. Firstly, with filing your income tax return, and then rectifying that as well, or doing a request for correction, as we call it. So a lot of times when clients try to file their income tax returns themselves, and there's perhaps an error or income that they did not disclose, it may perhaps be too late. And by the time you consult with your tax practitioner to rectify the situation. So that's why it's always best rather to file your taxes through a tax practitioner if you are unsure. If you prefer to rather have a look at tax optimization and so forth, because there's always options there for tax optimization in the form of retirement annuity and so forth. So that can definitely be opportunities that have been missed. Not filing your taxes, of course, in general. As we mentioned, the example prior where you perhaps did not update your details and so forth. That is, of course, also where a tax practitioner comes in. And he or she updates your details on their side to make sure that firstly, the tax practitioner perhaps receives the information first and relay that to you. So it's that reassurance in general, the peace of mind in the sense of, you are compliant, and that the necessary tax optimization has been done in that sense, because there's, of course, the non-compliance side where SARS can penalize you for that, or actually will penalize you for that. We've seen where there's 1 year or more outstanding for income tax returns, SARS levies admin penalties. What that basically constitutes is it's a monthly levy on a return outstanding to the amount of 250 up until 16,000 a month, which is quite a lot up until the point where you file that income tax returns, right?
Significant,
So it's always just best to stay compliant. And of course, non-compliance is not only returns, but also money outstanding.
Exactly.
So if there's any money outstanding or you have a late payment, for example, then SARS can levy interest on that as well. So just basically the reassurance from a tax practitioner's side of filing that returns and knowing that it's dealt with as best possible for compliance as well.
And I think one last thought I sort of have is, some people might be of the idea that, well, the information regarding this is costly to obtain. And no, so the onus is not on me to sort of educate myself and so on. But what do you think is the way for the South African public to stay on top of things and to really avoid these kind of easy things that you could rectify not only from yourself, but when you consult professionals in terms of the misconceptions people have?
So basically, tax is not everyone's forte. So if that is perhaps something that you're not interested in, perhaps have a look at a tax practitioner to just ensure that they take care of the necessary tax affairs. If you would like to dabble in tax, or rather gain more knowledge in that sense, there's always avenues such as videos like these, or perhaps consulting with tax practitioners just on certain subjects, or having a look at SARS's website itself. But a lot of taxpayers prefer to focus on what means or what is more important to them, and that is, of course, improving their business and their income in general. So rather offload that burden to a tax practitioner, let them focus on the tax burden for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you. Thanks for your time. It's been really informative. I've certainly enjoyed and gained a lot of information from the session. I hope to chat to you again soon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.